And the more specific you are, and the more intentional you are about connecting with that individual, literally the riches are in the niches, right? So when you niche down your avatar to the exact person that it needs to be, and you find out where them exact people are and you speak their language, it's incredibly powerful. I mean, an example of that would be you would speak totally different to a skateboarding audience than you would a golfing audience.
Sure.
I mean,
Absolutely.
it's literally not only two different types of communication, it's literally two different languages, really. I mean, they got different, buzzwords, things like that, hot buttons, all of these things that you want to understand about your audience. I actually talk about it in my book. It's literally understanding your audience better than you want to know them better than they know themselves. And then that's going to give you a target. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
once you framework what that avatar is, now you've got a target to deliver your message. You can go find out where they're at. In a world full of Facebook groups and communities. And I mean, Facebook, they are not slowing down on their communities. I mean, I think recently they just started doing over the last year or so commercials specifically on Facebook communities, meaning that this is it, right? And which makes sense because as a marketer, we're trained. We understand that clients and customers will typically buy for the product, right? Initially, the way the product makes them feel.
Yep.
They will stay because of the community. It was all right, man, because I was actually raised by my grandparents. So if I would have been, let's just say, stuck with my biological mother and she had left me at a very early age, and then my father was in prison the entire time that I grew up as a kid. So thankfully, I lived with my grandparents at an early age, and it was always good. My parents worked at a company some of you guys might remember. It went out of business a few years back called Dinner Bell, which is a meat packing company,
Okay.
and they would always get discounts on steak and
Oh, love it.
all kinds of things like that. In fact, my friends would always come over to our house to eat all of our food. So
Yeah.
it
That's
worked
awesome.
out.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So were you exposed to entrepreneurialism, early on, or where do you think you picked up that drive?
Yeah, so my grandfather owned a car dealership called Highley's Auto Sales, and that's my last name. So, and I still remember his slogan. It was "We are highly recommended." And
That's great.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so I actually started in my entrepreneur journey really with him. I mean, early on, I just didn't really like school. So I got into a program called, I think it was called OWE or OWA or something to that nature. But it was a program that you could actually go to school and you could work. So I would spend half a day at school, and then I would spend half a day working for him at his car dealership. Really small car dealership, so it wasn't like what you would think is like a big Ford dealership or something like that. But it was a small used car dealership where he sold about 350 cars a year.
Okay.
And that was all community driven. So everybody knew who he was in that community. So ultimately, I believe that like his networking in general
Yeah.
was quite incredible, and he just had that vibe. I mean, everybody liked him, and he was one of them guys that could even he would tell the like dirty jokes to people. And here he was, one of these guys that could tell a dirty joke. Like if I told one, I would come off looking like a total,
Yeah.
D-bag, right? But he was one of them guys that could tell it. I mean, he could tell a dirty joke to a nun and she would laugh about it.
Wow.
It
That's
was incredible. You ever met a guy like that, like an older
Yeah,
guy that could
absolutely.
tell dirty jokes,
Yeah.
and get away with it? Like he was literally, he had such a a good vibe or such a good intention. It was the craziest thing growing up. I mean, we literally inside of his garage, I would see the town millionaire come in, and then I would see the bum, the town bum, right?
Yep.
All in the
Yep.
same evening. So it
Yeah.
was like, nobody was, he would not exempt anybody. He would take anybody in. And it was an interesting dynamic to grow up in.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And obviously that was shaped and molded, the way that you think about things today. Do you feel like you have some of that same charisma, some of that same personality, maybe not with the dirty jokes, but being able to, talk to anybody or being, accepting of people?
Yeah, yeah, I'm definitely not a dirty joke teller, but I've always been, I've literally always been an individual who does I do accept everybody, and that's paid off because years ago we would be in different organizations, and we would be I would literally the lowest guy on the totem pole. I would go out of my way to shake their hand, to talk to them for a little while, and what
Hmm.
had happened is like later on down the road, that guy who was the lowest guy on the totem pole, you found out that he was the nephew from the highest guy on the totem pole,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And there were so many scenarios like that that really just worked out in my favor. But I really never did that to get anything. It just naturally happened that way. And even sometimes the low guy on the totem pole will end up being the big guy, the guy that you got to deal with at some point. And
Yeah.
it really paid off by taking the time to like shake their hand, talk to them, make everybody feel important. I mean, I was taught that you should make everybody feel important because ultimately everybody to themselves, they are the most important person.
Yeah.
So if you
Absolutely.
can make people feel important, you're just going to have a lot of people that like you. And the more people that you have that like you, the better odds that you're going to become a likable figure, not only in your community, in your industry, and all of these places. I mean, there's a place for polarity, I think, in some
Hmm.
industries,
Hmm.
but I mean, when it just comes to good old hometown business, I mean, you just ought to go out of your way to uh, just make people feel good. That's ultimately the reason why they like you to begin with, is the way that you make them feel.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it sounds like you have a very, I guess, abundant type mindset, right?
Right.
You believe in, there's always good things that are going to come from, your efforts, and everyone's, um, sort of participating to better humanity. Talk a little bit about, some things that you've realized, in your own life, your own, upbringings, creating your own business, that having that type of mindset or having that type of approach, really helped impact and sort of solidify, your success.
Yeah. So, one of the things that kind of come to mind as you ask me that question is the law of increase. And the law of increase is something that I've believed in for a long time, meaning that anything that you bring into this earth, you should be trying to deliver some sort of increase to everybody who you make a transaction with, right? Because ultimately in business, we're going to be making transactions with a bunch of different people, right?
Yeah,
And
sure.
there's going to be literally, are you offering them increase? Are you taking away? Are you decreasing from their life? Because people are going to always move towards increase. So if you stay in a state of increase, in a state of abundance, and you spend time thinking, meditating, and like, I don't even care if you're selling a piece of candy to a little kid from you should put a sense of increase in that transaction,
Hmm.
knowing that you are increasing that individual's life in that transaction. You are essentially, you receive the increase because you receive the money. They
Hmm.
receive the increase because they receive the product or service. There's so many people that feel like they're taking. And in that exchange, I mean, if you are taking from the world, you are literally delivering decrease. And
Hmm.
as a marketer, I own a company called Marketing Savage. And as a marketer, I understand that there's only two human motivations when it comes to purchasing anything at the core. And that is either they're trying to get away from decrease,
Hmm.
meaning I'll go over that here in a second, or they're moving towards increase, right? So, for example, if you frame a funnel, right, and you're trying to sell some sort of exercise workout program, or maybe even a supplement that is you're going to lose weight,
Hmm.
uh, if you were trying to get the clients move away from decrease, you would say something like, you ever feel so overweight that you just can't play with your kids anymore, and
Hmm.
there's all of these negative things attached to being overweight, so you focus on the negative things, right?
Hmm.
And then if you focus on the increase would be like, could you imagine taking off your shirt at the beach and feeling confident again, and all of these things, or walking into a room knowing that nobody's looking at you because you're overweight. Like, these things are like moving into the increase, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So everything that I look at inside a business, no matter whether if I'm frameworking the marketing, or if I'm selling something myself, I'm always wanting to either move that client away from decrease, which is towards increase, or I
Hmm.
want to move them towards increase. I
Mhm.
talk about something a lot with my personal coaching clients, and that's a money meditation. And as far as I know, written in my book, I wrote about this, and nobody that I know, even meditation experts, had never really considered doing this. Right? This is
Mhm.
one of the things that I came up on my own while I was doing. Years ago, I started a Hal Elrod program,
Okay. Yep.
which was the Miracle Morning.
Yep.
And later on, it shifted into all these things, kind of like my own cocktail, my own morning
Sure.
routine, right? I just added this, took away that, and just put together something for myself. And I later wrote about this in my book. But one of the things I talked about was the money meditation. And the money meditation is simply a meditation of abundance, meaning that you sit there with your eyes closed and you literally breathe in. And as you breathe in, you imagine money. And this could be diamonds, jewels, actual money. You imagine it floating over your head. And as you breathe out, you imagine around, settling around you. So you're breathing in and you're breathing out. And
Mhm.
I'm telling you, if you do this for 10 minutes a day, it will change your life. You will find that money just falls from everywhere. And one of the reasons why, so this is actually scientific, it's not woo woo at all.
Mhm.
One of the reasons why, and why this is very scientific, is what you're doing is you're tying your thought and walking in abundance with the one thing that you do inside of your subconscious, and that's breathing. So,
Mhm.
breathing is always taken over by your subconscious. And most of the time, we don't even know that we're doing it. We're not thinking about it. It's literally just woven into our subconscious. So, what happens is throughout the day, you are subconsciously emitting money
Mhm.
coming over and money surrounding you. So what happens is inside of your brain, we get something called the reticular activation system. The reticular activation system acts as a Google filter,
Mhm.
meaning that any core belief or anything that's inside of our subconscious, it's always going to try to find it and line up with it, right? So
Mhm.
what happens is you actually open up your reticular activation system to find opportunities for abundance to make money.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's literally putting your subconscious on a scavenger hunt where all day long you're looking for opportunity.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, and it's amazing when you start focusing in on certain things, how they do just show up, in your life, right? I mean,
Of
they
course.
they I actually just talked about this, I think maybe the last podcast too, where um, if you have something that you're struggling with, a lot of people struggle with, how what they're going to name their business, or some type of creative or whatever it might be. Just start thinking about it and kind of put it in the back of your mind, and eventually something's going to strike you that is like, oh, there it is, that's the answer, whatever that might be that you're struggling over. You start thinking about that and focusing on it, and eventually something strikes you, and it appears. But I love being, I love the process of immersing yourself, intentionally, in that thought process to create that type of outcome in your life. Do you have any type of I guess frameworks, or structures that you use to kind of focus your mind on that activity? Because I know, myself included, I have a hard time um pushing everything else out, getting into a meditative state, being that focused on that one thing. Is there something that you found that works well for you to kind of get into that type of state?
Yeah, so I actually spend the first hour of my day really just on myself.
Hmm.
And that's part of my first hour of my day every day. I wake up at 3:33 a.m. every
Hmm.
day. I don't want to say every day because there's been some times that I've slipped up and there's been some
Yeah.
periods of time where, I've came off track, but I can tell you that I do it a lot and I'm doing it now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And but it's super powerful because I try to get everything done in my entire day by 9 a.m.
Okay.
So I want if I decided to do anything that I want after 9 a.m., if I want to, peruse around town, if I want to go somewhere with my wife, if I want to go hang out with my son for the day, I am good after 9 a.m. That's what I try to do each and every day. Now, when it comes to getting in the habit of meditating, here's what you got to remember. It's going to be hard at first. Over time, you begin developing what's called what I believe is focus, right?
Hmm.
So one of the things that we lack as human beings is the ability to focus. Do you remember how old are you?
I am. How old am I? 45, 44, something
45.
like
Okay,
that.
so you remember these days. I'm 41. So
Okay.
you remember the days when you used to have to call, I think it was 411
Yeah.
was
Oh, yeah.
the
Yep.
number that you had to call
Uh-huh.
to get another number. So
Yep.
back then we didn't have, smartphones or, our internet was super slow. So you didn't even think about using that.
Yep. Exactly.
So you would literally call 411 to get them to give you a number. It was a phone number lookup system that we had back
Hmm.
then. And I can't even tell you. I mean, and it costs $1 every time you did it.
Exactly.
Like
Yeah,
it
I
was like
remember.
99 cents or something. And back then, I mean, you think about it, $1 back then was probably $5 now, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And so we're literally calling. And how many times have you forgot, or you didn't write it down, or you thought you would remember it and you forgot and you had to call back and spend another dollar?
Yeah.
And it's literally how much we lack focus that we can't even focus on. God, what are we talking about? 4, 5, 6, 7 digits, right?
Yeah. Yep.
For a very small period of time from hanging up the phone and then recalling and calling back, right?
Yep.
And so, anyhow, that's what we lack as human beings. We lack the ability to focus. And meditation is like the training of that muscle. It trains you to focus on one thing. So, when
Hmm.
you first start, just like working out, your muscles are very weak, meaning that as you're doing these breathing exercises, your mind's going to be going from place to place. It's going to be buzzing around. It's going to be thinking about, emails, who commented on your Facebook post, all of these things, right? Are
Hmm.
going to be buzzing around inside of your mind. And that's why I recommend doing it in the morning, very early, before you even get involved with the day to day. Don't open up an email. Don't open up your Facebook. Don't open up your Instagram. Spend time with you first. Jump on something motivational, do some meditation, do some things early in the morning with yourself before you start moving on to these chaotic things that cause our mind to really bounce from thing to thing to thing to thing, right?
Hmm.
And then as you meditate, you got to think of it as like a little kid, right? So you got this little kid inside of your mind that wants to run off. Okay. You ever see, one of your kids are just a wild little kid. You sit them down somewhere and then they just take off and they run off,
Sure.
right?
Absolutely.
Well, your mind is a lot like that little kid. So you're going to spend some time chasing the kid down and putting them right back where they're at. Right.
Hmm.
But you got to continuously do that over and over and over again. And I promise if you continue to do that, you'll start gaining progress. And then one day you won't even realize it. You'll go into like a deep meditative state. And that, my friends, will actually slow down time. So what happens is because you're training your focus muscle, throughout the day, you're going to feel like you have all of this time that you never had before. And really, the time is finite, right? I mean, it's the one thing that makes life valuable is that
Yeah.
time is finite. And literally, the quality of time that we spend, if your mind is just bouncing from thing to thing to thing, life is going to be moving fast, although it could be moving a lot slower and a lot more controlled and a lot more calculated if you worked out that muscle, that meditation muscle that kept your mind focused on one thing at a time.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it has a lot of benefits to it, but the reason why your mind is kind of running off everywhere is just that you really haven't trained it yet inside of that focus gym that you got to go to each and every day to begin building that muscle.
Hmm. No, I love that. I've noticed how you communicate and the way that you frame um, your thoughts in an actual activity that you can physically see, like you said, like your mind is like the kid that's running around all over the place. And then I visualize, yeah, I see that all the time, or I can remember little kids that I've been around that do the exact same thing. So you kind of put yourself in that um in that setting. Have you found that has been an effective way to be able to communicate concepts to people, to be able to sort of frame their mind to again get them to sort of understand something, and I guess the next time when they go and bring it up, they can visualize that little kid. When I sit down to
Right.
try to structure myself and focus, I can picture myself, oh, I'm fighting the little kid that's running around right now, right? So have you found over the years that that's effective form of communicating with people?
Well, absolutely. And I mean, as a marketer and as an individual who speaks on stage, like I understand that when I speak over somebody's head, and I'm not saying that I'm smarter than anybody by
Hmm.
any means, but if I'm talking about a subject that you have no idea about, then we're going to use something called it's kind of like.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's the segue. For instance, if I talked about a Facebook pixel, I literally just lost 50% of the audience right there by
Yeah.
saying Facebook pixel. Half the audience will be like, well, I'm kind of familiar with it. The other half the audience, they have no idea what it is at all. So I would say something like a Facebook pixel installed on your website is kind of like having a virtual salesman that when people come through the front door of your website and they check it out, if they don't buy anything, this virtual salesman are going to chase them around and try to get them to
Hmm.
come back and buy something again.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So that's me breaking down what a Facebook pixel is with something that we call as marketers. It's kind of like.
Yeah.
And so you always try to find a story that works, and you can paint a visual, a vision, right, for the individual that they can connect with. So that's ultimately the art of storytelling, and
Hmm.
also just being able to recognize when you're speaking. A lot of us speak industry jargon,
Sure.
and you got to be able to recognize when you are doing that, because when you are speaking industry jargon, you're saying something that only people would know about in your certain industry, or you are talking over everybody's head. And once you lose somebody, it's really hard to snag them up and bring them back into the conversation.
Hmm.
A great example of that would be, gosh, they said like Mitt Romney and Donald Trump when they were running, not to go political, I'm not even going political, but they were running in the primaries. And I think Mitt Romney was speaking at like they say at 11th grade level. And
Okay.
I think it was like 11th grade high school level. And Donald Trump was speaking at a fourth grade level.
Yeah.
And that was brilliant on Donald Trump's behalf because he never spoke over anybody's head,
Yeah. Yep.
and which kept him connected with everybody,
Yeah.
right? And the
Yep.
moment Mitt Romney said something that just, you forgot or you didn't know or all of these things, you would literally disconnect from his entire conversation. You would forget everything else that he said
Hmm.
because you didn't
Hmm.
understand one of the key components segueing into, the next and the next, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's some of the things that I learned just being a marketer and a communicator in general, and also a teacher. I mean, I mentor over 250 individuals. We have coaching calls every week, and I've got to
Hmm.
be able to articulate things to them in ways that all of them will be able to understand it. And it's because it's my job to help them.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. And I've never, again, never really thought of it that way, but yeah, that makes perfect sense. I like it's kind of like, start to that to be able to get yourself again started down that path to be able to, think of a different way to be able to phrase it. Do you have any other tips, communication tips, whether that be speaking, public speaking, or just being able to phrase or explain complicated things more easily?
Yeah, ideally, what you want to do is it really starts with your client avatar. And understanding your audience too, because I've got multiple client avatars now. I mean,
Yeah.
I've kind of got like the upper rung of them, and I've got the lower and everything in between. So you've got to understand, number one, like who the audience is, right?
Yeah.
For example, I was on the phone call the other day with Pete Vargas, who is probably one of the lead people in America for getting people on stage and connecting people on audiences all over the world. Actually, yeah, he is all over the world. I mean, he was on Grant Cardone's stage four times,
Okay.
and he hit me with something that stumped me. He said, he was just recently they got $100 million mastermind, and them guys pay $100,000 each to be a member of this mastermind. And he said, well, what kind of a lead magnet would you give to them? And what a lead magnet is something that speakers, or when you're on podcast, you literally drop a URL, or you say, head on over to my website
Hmm.
and pick up this free, download that will help you, whatever, learn how to build a house or whatever
Hmm.
that is, right?
Hmm.
And people will go to the .com. And he asked me, he said, well, what would you drop at this one? And literally the guy's net worth at this place was anywhere from, usually their companies were anywhere from 8 to near $100 million each.
Hmm. Hmm.
So what do you drop on stage to them individuals, right? Compared to a stage of folks that are paying $199 a ticket.
Sure.
So there's that big, chasm there, but you got to understand who it is that you're delivering your message to.
Hmm.
And you got to be intentional on speaking directly to them. So once you create a client avatar, meaning that that is a description of the client, that is who they are, how much money they make, how many kids they have, That's what podcast do they listen to? All of these things. You want to be very descriptive because you want to speak to your audience as if you're speaking to one person. Okay.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
you technically are only communicating to one person at a time individually, right? We may be sitting on platforms where we're communicating to a lot of people, but they are receiving it individually.
Yeah. Yep.
So because of that, you got to have a clear picture painted who you're talking to, what are you giving them, what type of messages are you delivering them, how are you changing their life, where are you taking them? You can go deeper and deeper into like what's the common enemy, all of these things, right? You can
Mhm.
actually break down about your avatar. In fact, actually, I got a new business venture and a new book that I'm writing. And just this morning, I broke down an entire client avatar for exactly who the book is for.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because when I'm out talking about it and speaking about it, and when it's ready to drop and all these things, like I want to connect with that individual.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the more specific you are, and the more intentional you are about connecting with that individual, literally the riches are in the niches, right? So when you niche
Mhm.
down your avatar to the exact person that it needs to be, and you find out where them exact people are, and you speak their language, it's incredibly powerful. I mean, an example of that would be you would speak totally different to a skateboarding audience than you would a golfing audience.
Sure.
I mean,
Absolutely.
it's literally not only two different types of communication, it's literally two different languages, really. I
Mhm.
mean, they got different, buzzwords, things like that, hot buttons, all of these things that you want to understand about your audience. I actually talk about it in my book. It's literally understanding your audience better than you want to know them better than they know themselves.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
that's going to give you a target. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
once you framework what that avatar is, now you've got a target to deliver your message. You can go find out where they're at in a world full of Facebook groups and communities. And I mean, Facebook, they are not slowing down on their communities. I
Mhm.
mean, I think recently they just started doing over the last year or so commercials specifically on Facebook communities,
Mhm.
meaning
Mhm.
that this is it, right? And which makes sense because as a marketer, we're trained. We understand that clients and customers will typically buy for the product, right? Initially, the way the product makes them feel,
Yep.
they will stay because of the community,
Yeah, that makes perfect
right?
sense.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's even an example. You see it even in, Harley Davidsons and stuff like that.
Yep. Yep.
They
Yeah,
are
the
there
following, yeah.
for the community. I mean, they can make friends. If you pull up in a
Yeah.
Harley Davidson, you see another guy in a Harley Davidson, you immediately got common ground.
Yeah. No, makes perfect
And
sense. Y-
yeah.
you touched on something. I'm curious, go a little bit deeper into it, right? So you mentioned the $100 million mastermind, and it doesn't really matter what the price tag is. But after you establish your avatar, your perfect customer, what would be the next step that you like in the example that you gave? What would be the lead magnet that you would drop in front of that person that is $100 million. So again, it doesn't really matter, what the price tag is, but if you were looking to explore like what is the right lead magnets, for this.
Sure.
And again, obviously there's a bunch of different things that you can
So
explore and try to
it
find the
does
answer.
the money
But
part does matter because
okay.
individuals who have different net worth have different set of problems, period. I mean, I see it in all of my business groups. Literally, the business groups that are at the lowest level, they have certain problems that are more
Hmm.
tactical.
Hmm.
They're more knowledge based. They need to know some sort of knowledge to get to from where they are to where they need to be, right?
Hmm.
The second level, mid levels are usually accountability based, right? So they got some sort of knowledge, they got a pretty good product or service, but they need held accountable and they need kind of like held to the fire, right?
Hmm.
The highest levels are actually individuals who want to pay to have it done,
Hmm.
and they are into trading money for time, right? So mid level would be first level, and mid level would be like literally trading time for money. They're in
Hmm.
there trading time for money. The higher level, the highest levels, which are my people that are like 50,000 a year to $100,000 a year, they are trading money for time. They just want to buy their time over and over again, right? So there's a different set of problems at every single level. If I was to pitch to the $100 million audience and it was something because they're paying about $100,000 a year each, or they are paying $100,000 a year each to be a part of that mastermind, It would have to be two things right now. Okay. So what's hot right now is biogenetics, meaning peptides, things like that, that
Mhm.
are going to enhance your performance and make you healthier ultimately.
Yeah.
Like nowadays, like here's what we're finding. You can buy your health at a certain level.
Yeah.
And they're figuring this out. Like I got a friend right now that literally went to the same mastermind, real good friend of mine, and he is on this $30,000 program. It's like 30,000 bucks for the first couple months, and I mean they detected crazy amounts of stuff in his system, everything from black mold. So he's got some sort of spray that he sprays up his nose, right,
Mhm.
and that'll
Mhm.
detoxify the black mold that's been in his body for who knows how long, all the way down to different peptides and things like that that are for different to regenerate your cells and make you more healthy and make you heal from injuries quicker and all of these things, right? And I think he told me he sent out a hair test over to like Sweden. He sent a piece of
Mhm.
hair to Sweden.
Mhm.
They sent a stool sample. They took stool samples. They took
Yeah.
like 17 bloods of vial, and then they took vials of blood from his fingertips. All of these things, right, are huge in the higher up echelon of these groups, right?
Mhm.
The second thing is business investments. If you can ever put yourself on the front end of any kind of investment opportunity that allows people to make passive income at a higher income level without doing the work, and you can pitch it in such a way where it's secure and they're betting on a lot of times they're betting on the jockey. So if they don't know you really well, you really got to have a
Mhm.
good structured presentation. It's one of
Mhm.
the things that I've done for a lot of companies. I've designed their entire pitch so that way, when they are pitching an investment opportunity in front of people that have a lot of money, they feel comfortable with spending the money on that investment.
Yeah. 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 Makes perfect sense. And I'm glad that you brought that back, because you're absolutely right. It does, there are different needs to different people.
It's a different set of problems is really what
Yeah.
it is. It's all that it comes down to.
Yeah.
And the key thing that people got to remember is that like, the reason I'm at the point where I try to buy time, right? Like
Mhm.
I don't value money near as much as I value time.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is that I know money is always going to come back, right? So I've built businesses, I've built, all of these different companies and all this stuff from scratch. Money just continuously comes back to me.
Mhm.
Time doesn't. Time's
Yep.
gone, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
That stuff doesn't come back, right? So, at a certain point in business, when you build up and you create scalable companies and all that stuff, and you grow your enterprise and all these things, right? You will start to value time more than money. You just understand that it's just more valuable.
Mhm.
Money is just there to purchase labor and to expand your message, right? It makes you a bigger, better version of who you are. It expands you, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Time is what actually is where the value's at.
Yeah, I love that. And I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Talk a little bit about your book. Who is that written for? Who's the avatar? What are the concepts, things that are covered in it?
Yeah, so I wrote a book called The Marketing Savage. And ultimately, the avatar is an individual in business who wants to learn how to market their business, but they really kind of understand like they've tried everything, nothing really works. And my book is all about your energy, shifting your energy. At least 70% of the book, literally, is that's why I wrote on the book. It's a marketing book like you've never read before,
Hmm.
because ultimately it's about falling into the becoming the best individual that you possibly can be, showing up as the best you can be in the world and delivering that inside of your marketing message. So there's a lot of things in my book that are much different than traditional marketing. Ultimately I talk about, how to amplify your message, how to connect with people, how to make great alignments with individuals that can amplify your message.
Hmm.
We talk about something called the Dream 100, where you
Hmm.
focus on 100 of your dream clients and you spend, all of your time focusing on them. And I
Hmm.
even simplify it down to a Dream 15 or a Dream 20, where ultimately you follow the individuals on social media, and you can only follow about 15 to 20 people on Facebook or on Instagram or on LinkedIn. So it
Hmm.
gives you the ability to dial in and follow just the people that can expand your message, that can make it bigger and better. And ultimately, you want to get dialed in on connecting with them. Ultimately, it takes anywhere from 8 to like I think it's like 8 to 20 exposures to an individual before they start looking back at you, before they start seeing that
Noticing.
you're
Yeah.
in their circle, right? So how this works, you actually go on social media and you follow the individuals that can expand your message. And I don't even care if you are in a little farm town. There's an individual inside of that town. There's a bunch of them that can expand your message. I know
Mhm.
because I started my business. I live in Dallas, Texas now, but I started my business in a little farm town called
Mhm.
Fletcher, Ohio. And we had a local butcher, we had a local barber shop, we had a local grocery store, we had a funeral, the funeral home guy, right?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
that was it. So I found out where all of them guys were. I shopped at all of their places. I never went to the funeral, but he was he was the party guy, believe it or not. He had a party spot out in the middle of the country. So I used to go out to his parties
Mhm.
and I would mingle around with everybody in that community. And next thing you know, I was the go-to individual in that little tiny community. It's the
Mhm.
same on social media now. You got to look at the people that are in your community, the ones that can really expand your message, and follow them, comment on their stuff, talk on it, get to know them, reach out. Don't be salesy. Just get to know them, build relationships. Sales comes with
Mhm.
relationships.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
I talk a lot about how to do that, about how to distinguish who your ideal clients are, who can expand your message. If an individual has a platform and they got people that could purchase off of you, people that could stand to use your products and services, then you want to focus on the individuals that got platforms. A quick example of that is we had I learned this from an old man Wynant was his name. And he owned a chocolate company and now it's a franchise actually. And he would go into each and every day. My wife used to work at the newspaper. He would walk in there each and every day and personally buy a newspaper. And I mean, he could have went to any gas station in town. He could have had the newspaper delivered to his front door, but he chose to each and every day to walk into the local newspaper place. And that's back when newspapers are actually, thriving and doing
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And he would buy his newspaper from the person at the front counter. And the reason why is because they seen him every day. And
Mhm.
just by association, you can think about how many reporters walk by. Think
Mhm.
about how many management walk by. Think about just getting to know the person at the front counter and they saying, "Oh, Mr. Wynan came in today."
Mhm. Yeah.
So your name, you were in their environment, you were in their circle. He was in the newspaper all of the time. And I'm not talking about paid deals. He was in there with just written articles all of the time.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's because he was near them. So just by association, today we can do that digitally, right?
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
talk a lot about that. I talk a lot about how to become the best version of you, how to get in the right state of energy, how to walk in abundance, all the things we talked about here, how to do my what's called spiritual surrender, which is now my morning ritual, and also how to market to the individuals, how to do it in like a organic, very powerful way that just it works.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I can't. I'm definitely check this book out. But what I wanted to say in closing here, it's I love, we started off with your upbringing, and you telling the stories about your grandfather and the car dealership, and how you kind of learned by watching there. And it seems like that has just sort of evolved throughout your life, and comes back full circle. You tell the story, what the book is about, and it's a lot of the basis behind what you learned early on at the car dealership. So really, really cool, really inspiring that those days inspired you so much to be able to continue it on throughout your life. So really, really cool. And I love the message. I love the thought process and the energy behind everything that you're doing too. So kudos to you. This is really, really cool. So I appreciate the time, John. And if people want to learn more about you, your services, the books, what would be the best way to reach out and get in touch?
Yeah, Matt, they can head on over to marketingsavage.com or they can simply head on over to Facebook. And I've got a group called Marketing Savage, and they can become a part of that group and begin receiving free content right away.
Love it. I love it, John. Fantastic. And keep up the energy. Like I said, love everything you're doing. So really, really cool.
All right, Matt, I appreciate it, my friend. Thank you.